Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History Spiritual Quest number 123. That's 123, where we're going through chapter 14 of the book of John out of the New Testament, and then we're going to be walking through chapter 14 of the Impersonal Life by Joseph Benner. Elvis bridged these two books together, and then he carried that bridge into many other books and into many other hearts. And we're trying to follow Elvis's bridges. But we're going to start with a song, and this song is about Elvis walking through these very texts. This is Word on Fire.
Got a
thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. Today we're going to hear those echoes out of one of our favorite comic books. And this is the comic that we've been walking through that tells the story of the Gospels, and it fills in for us what we've missed in reading just the book of John. It also gives us a visual depiction to help us anchor our thoughts. Hi, Monica. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And so in this panel, we're in the middle of the Last Supper. Judas has already walked out. And the panel says, "Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say well, for so I am. But I am among you as he that serveth." So in this panel, Jesus is making himself equal to the 11 people that are left with him. That he's dining with them as a man, one with another. And that in this moment he has set aside his divine glory in order to share in the sequential experience of the universe, which is the way that we experience the universe. In the next panel, Jesus says, "One of you that eats with me shall betray me." Oh, I guess we haven't gotten to Judas yet. I was a little ahead. He had left earlier, and I think I'd gotten confused about that. It was not in John. Apparently, Judas had already set up the betrayal before he got into the supper, from what we've seen in the comics and read from John. And so there's actually 2 leavings, and this is the one from the Last Supper. Jesus is pointing out that one of them is going to betray him. Now, Jesus earlier in the supper had set up the lesson that all of them had resisted and were resisting him in some way. That their personalities were not completely clear, and they could not receive the messages that he was sending with absolute clarity. And in this moment of the Last Supper, he begins to send rapid fire messages, like a telegraph that's just clicking away. And it's too fast to be understood in the moment, even by a great telegraph operator. They're going to have to come back and look at the series of dots and dashes that was left. They're going to have to translate it later. But all through their experience with Jesus, through the time that they've spent with him, this resistance has been there. And it's their personality and the way that it fogs their ability to see the light, which is the way that Joseph Benner talks about alignment. And that even when we are aligned, our own fogs can still keep us from seeing clearly. And that's the lesson that Jesus was teaching earlier. And now he's reached a point where he says, one of you is actually going to betray me. And they're all realizing it could be themselves, because they're all poised to betray him, because they are in this state of misunderstanding or inability to understand everything he's saying. And it leads people to grasp onto what they can and then think that's all of the message and begin to spin wild messages off of it. And so Jesus is giving them a whole lot of lessons right here, condensed into a few moments. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And each of these divine shards, we are each a divine shard wrapped in a perfect soul body, which could perfectly express the divine attribute that we're sent here to express. But the soul body isn't part of this mortal world. It helps to bridge the gap because it gives the template for the imperfect mortal body that we inhabit. But that imperfect body is an imperfect filter. And so it warps the message of the attribute as it comes through. And in order to achieve our mission, we've got to unwarp it. But that means we've got to understand the filter. We have to understand ourselves. And these men are all realizing that they don't understand themselves, that there are pieces of themselves hidden from themselves, pieces they've purposely hidden from themselves. It's part of your personality. It's very concerned that you survive here on the mortal plane. That's its one and only job. It's very loyal, and it will stop at nothing to keep you safe in what its view of safe is, which is your ability to continue to function physically. And that includes portions of your mental abilities, but the only mental abilities that have to function are your ability to eat and breathe, move around a little bit. That's what it's most concerned with keeping functioning. And it will sacrifice anything to do that. And these men are starting to understand that lesson. And they're asking, is it I? Is it me that's going to betray you? And they ask the disciple next to Jesus to ask who it is. They're too afraid to even ask Jesus who it is. This panel showed us that they were asking, but the book of John didn't make it clear that they were asking. It was more that Peter was saying, no, we wouldn't let that happen, Jesus. But they were wanting to know, who is it? We'll stop it. And it looks like it's Peter that's asking to ask who it is. Because, of course, that's Peter's first thought. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to run out and find whoever it is here. And I'm going to take care of them. And then there won't be a betrayal. Peter is very resistive to anything that Jesus says that contradicts the way that Peter thinks that the universe should run. Now, Peter's also, when that is pointed out to him, he's the first to throw those things aside. And then he becomes, again, a little too overeager. This is the way that Peter is. And I think it reflects in Elvis that Peter is a decent model to look at if you're wondering, how would Elvis react in a situation? You could also think, how would Peter react in that situation? Because Elvis had the same tendency towards action. He had the same tendency to look at things through his worldview and make a judgment. And those aren't bad things. That's what makes Peter the leader of the group. He's able to function very well in the material and mortal world. And Jesus is training him how to do the same in the spiritual world. And these are the lessons that Peter's learning in this moment, especially in this rapid fire lesson section, because Jesus doesn't have much time left. And they say, Lord, who is it? And Jesus says, he that dips his hand with me in this dish. And we can see Judas and his pointy chin and his pointy beard. And then Jesus says to Judas, and Judas looks angry. He looks mean. It says, that you do quickly. No man knew what Jesus meant by this. I'm not sure that's true. Judas knew. The others may not have understood clearly. But Judas has already set up the betrayal. He knows exactly what he's going to do. He's been thinking about it. It's been spiraling around in his mind. Jesus has seen it there. Jesus brought him to this Last Supper, extended the hand one last time, and now he's sending him out to walk into his own solitude, is the way that Joseph Benner would describe it. Because he leaves, Judas immediately goes out, and it was night in this panel. Now you can see the one looking after him is Peter. Peter is learning a lesson here about discernment. He did not see that Judas was the betrayer. In fact, Peter got wrapped up in the moment, became concerned that he was the betrayer. Started to focus in on his own self-issues, which wasn't necessarily the wrong move, but it blinded him to look at any of the others and to think, one of my flock, because this is Peter's flock. Jesus is here. It's his flock at the moment, but Peter is the one being trained to take the flock forward. He's the shepherd in training. And here is a sheep that definitely needs something, and he's totally missed it. In fact, he let Judas carry the bag of money, which Jesus has indicated was a manifestation of Judas's real inner issues, that he values material things, that he values money. And of course, this is a lesson that would have struck right to the heart of Elvis, because he had money. It's not that Elvis loved money. I don't think Elvis did love money. I think he worked very hard to keep the love of money from his heart. Love is somewhat of a universal acidic agent, acidic spiritual agent. It's like all materialism, the essence of all materialism. It's strong. And yet Elvis was able to, I think, for the most part, push that materialism away. Now, he did still enjoy his materialism. But was it affecting his ability to align? And that would have been a question that Elvis asked himself often, because he was very concerned about alignment. That's why he was reading all these books. But Peter here, he's recognizing, I totally missed this. Now that's another lesson that Elvis may have picked up on, because we saw in the phone call that was recorded by Red West that Elvis makes statements that some things were his fault, that he was willing to accept responsibility for the deterioration of the relationship, that he was as much to blame as Red, that there was no need to blame each other. There was plenty of blame to go around. He made several statements like that, which indicate that he even made statements that he had reflected on things, which is like Peter in this moment that we can see in the comic. That's not really brought out in the Bible, but Peter here is thinking, how should I have done something different? I could have prevented this, and I've already missed the opportunity. And then Jesus says something devastating, which is, all of you shall fail this night because of me. And Jesus is indicating that they're all going to betray him in some way. They're resisting him in some way. They're doing something that is akin to what Judas is doing. It just hasn't reached Judas's level. But this thought about different levels is really another fog to keep you from the fact that all of these type of things are keeping you from alignment. Spiritually, they're all just as bad because they're fogging and keeping you from communication with the I am who lives in your heart. And so the Bible does say things about when you think a sin, it's as bad as doing a sin, that all sins are equal in the eyes of the Lord. Different passages like this, which Joseph Benner is interpreting to mean they all create the same amount of obscurity to clarity. That in that way, they're all equal in this spiritual sense. Now, here in the mortal realm, we weigh these transgressions differently. And I don't think that Jesus or the Bible is making a statement about weighing the transgressions here on the mortal plane. They're talking about spirituality. That's what the New Testament is always talking about. Joseph Benner completely separates out the mortal from the spiritual to make it clearer, to bring more clarity. Now, at the same time, that sacrifices something about the duality of the way that we look at things in the Bible. So, there's always something lost in a translation or a movement into another form or a reflection on a form. But in this panel, everybody's being told you're all going to sin. And Peter jumps up and he says, "Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death." So Peter makes a statement of loyalty. Now, is that a statement, I won't betray you? That's not what that statement says. So, in a way, Peter has shifted in the way that he resists. Although it's probably a good shift, because I think earlier Peter would have said, I will not betray you. And now he's shifted to, I'm ready to do these other things and be put to death, which is a way of saying I won't betray you, but it's not as absolute as I won't betray you. It leaves room for what you just said can be true. So it's a more accepting form of resistance, I guess you could say, but it's a movement around the spiral. And Jesus says, this night before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. So he gives him 3 times that he's going to do this. And it's just a statement of fact. And Peter declares, if I should die with you, I will not deny you. And so say all the disciples. And this panel is showing that if Jesus is with them physically, then they believe that they could resist whatever it is that will tempt them. And that could be very true, because Jesus has already said that if the people did not praise him when he came, the very rocks would sing. There's a frequency that's coming out of Jesus all the time. And it's the perfect frequency, and all the others can feel it. All the divine shards near him resonate with Jesus. And so in those moments, which is alignment made real on earth, all of our lives we've only experienced sheepfolds that resemble unity, that mirror unity, that reflect unity. But when Jesus truly is physically standing next to these men, it is unity. Or very, very, very close. But he's not going to be next to them for the rest of their lives, not physically. That's what he's preparing them for now. And they're recognizing this issue with proximity to his physical being. And he's trying to get across the message that I've been telling you I'm in your hearts all this time, and that's where we've got to do these things. And that it's been great that we've been able to be together physically, and that I've been able to share this life with you. But when I'm not here, I'm still here. You will still have my strength. But in Peter's case, and in the case of all these 11 men, you're not trained. You don't have the skills yet. Because I've been here, kind of like a set of training wheels. And now the training wheels are getting taken off. You're going to have to ride this bicycle by yourself. That bicycle's in your heart. You're not ready for that. You're going to fall down several times these first few trials. I know you will. And it's okay that you're going to, as long as you get back up and get back on the bike. Peter, you're going to do it 3 times tonight. You're going to get some skin knees. It's going to hurt. You're going to think about it for a while. It's going to be a good lesson, but it's the lesson of doing. Can't learn all lessons through a book or by being told. You have to do, and that's what Peter's going to do, and he's going to fail 3 times. But Jesus is forgiving all 11 men for all the times that they will fail, which will be many more than just this night. And this panel says, a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you. And so this is like my verbal equations from, that I distilled from Joseph Benner. Jesus is basically distilling everything that he's ever taught them into a single lesson, and says if you can't hold on to anything else, hold on to this one lesson, spiral around it always, and you're always going to find alignment and move forward into the right path. Love one another as I have loved you. In other words, your love for each other equals my love for you. This is what Joseph Benner would indicate is unity, and that is built of love, and that God is love, Jesus is love, everything is love. Love is the building block of the universe. It's not an emotion, it's a state of being. We feel it like an emotion. It's the same sensory perception as emotion, but it's unity, it's Jesus, it's God. It's these 11 men and Jesus in this moment. And it's the commandment that he gives, love one another as I love all of you. Everyone's a divine shard. All the divine shards are connected through love in unity. And then Jesus says, this is my body, which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me. And he gives a piece of bread to each of the disciples. They share this meal, and he symbolizes the bread as his body. Now, Elvis is not Jesus, and Jesus is not Elvis. Elvis is not a savior. He is not a religious icon. But everybody's life is reflected in Jesus, and Jesus is reflected in their lives. And this moment of gift giving, where Jesus is giving something very personal to these people, it's something they ingest. So it's very personal. It's a piece of his own food, a piece of this bread. We think of it as something common because bread is bread is not as central to life in today's society as it was in the time of Jesus, nor is it as personal. This bread was not bought at a baker's shop, most likely. There may have been a baker in this area, and that may be where they got this from, but that'd be a local guy. He'd be your neighbor. You'd see him all the time. You'd know who he was. But there's a good chance they made this bread right there at the house. Really no reason not to make your own bread at the house in these days. And I think the bakery thing's more of a medieval thing, but I'm not really sure. Maybe I should check. I like history. I'm a historian. I should check that out. But it's very personal because they're going to eat it. Now, Elvis, he gave a lot of gifts, and they were often very personal. Jewelry that he'd been wearing, pieces of himself. Now, people weren't going to eat it, but he was giving them substantial pieces that they could carry for a lifetime if they wished to do so, as an actual symbol. Jesus and the disciples are poor. They're trading this gift that will be ingested and then will have been made part of themselves forever. They won't carry it openly, but it will always be there inside. Elvis was doing this externally, but he was also using materialistic objects, so that makes sense as well. It wasn't exactly a spiritual thing, but there's a spiritual component to what Elvis was doing. There were even certain spiritual lessons Elvis was passing along, but there were multiple layers to the gift because obviously the person receiving it, they're not like the disciples in this moment who see the symbolism. The people that Elvis was giving gifts to, they were seeing the materialism, although they're connecting it to the individuality of the moment, the memory of the event, the specialness of that moment in their lives. But it's about materialism because they're like, I got this very expensive ring, I got this very expensive car. And Elizabeth says that Jesus had to die for us in order to save us. I just wonder sometimes if it had to have been that way, if it had to have been in such a brutal way. That's a good question. Why did it have to be death? And why did it have to include suffering? I think Joseph Benner would look at that, and we're obviously coming up to it. So we're going to get a better spiral in on it, but I think Joseph Benner would have said that in some ways it's a spectacle of symbolism, that it all had to come together in those moments to be recorded that way, to make it through the Bible and to us, so that we could see that there was suffering and that there was sacrifice and that it's connected to what we believe is the greatest sacrifice, which is our mortal life. And that for people who do not believe in Jesus or who do not see that, they don't recognize that unity is there. They don't see that love is the building block of the universe. They don't understand that eternity is a place outside of time completely. They don't know that they have a divine shard. This is the state that everybody lives in until it's somehow revealed to them, right? We are like the baby birds that the mother has pushed out of the nest, and we're flying around, and we've forgotten that there is any nest. We've forgotten that we're birds. We're just flying and enjoying it and loving the moment, and then something reminds us about there's some reason we're here. There's something else out there. There's a place to go back to. That's what people who are being spiritually awakened feel. That's the way they experience it. Others are further along the spiritual path and they feel perhaps a drudgery or a weariness. And that this symbol of this death, it shocks us back into the moment that Jesus said that's not death. He says that he was going to live forever, eternally, and yet here we see his body die. And so it's a lesson about how the body, how the personality is not, it's not the reality of anything. It's a tool that's left behind when it's time to return to unity. And so, did it need to be in the way that it was? And I think God would say yes. And then our job is to keep spiraling around that until we understand why. And that will probably lead to some breakthrough in our ability to project the divine attribute that we're here to project. Or maybe it's one of those pieces we don't ever need to understand because our mission, our particular attribute doesn't require that understanding. I think that's some of the mysteries of the universe too, because we can't hold everything. And we've got limited data space in these hard drives of our physical brains. And we've got to use that to the best advantage of the shard. The shard can access all knowledge, and it might be able to hold on to it forever, but it can't push it through to our physical brain unless there's room on the memory card. And any of you that have ever dealt with anything that requires memory on a computer that you build up day after day, like if you're running a YouTube channel, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about limited disk space and how you've got to be nearly a hoarder, or not a hoarder, but you got to be very strategic, especially if you're going to hoard data, about how you do it and where you put it and what's worth storing. And in this passage, in this panel from the comic, it says, also Jesus gives them the cup, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood, which is shed for you. And so that's interesting because it talks about New Testament. And of course, this is the gospel from the New Testament. These men didn't have a New Testament to look at like we do. Some of these men are going to write it. And Jesus has just given them the name for the collection of books that they're going to put out, and it's the New Testament. Now, did they use that particular term? I don't know. When did they start using the term New and Old Testament? I don't know. That'd be kind of interesting to know, too. Hi, Pat. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you. And then Jesus says, for as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till he come. And then it gives you a verse of 1 Corinthians 11:26, which is long after the Gospels show this scene. So that's interesting as well. That the full context of the story occurs across multiple books that are then all collected under the name New Testament. And Monica says that she's often wondered the same. Why did the Bible and what happened to Jesus have to be so brutal? I think those are excellent questions for the sheepfold. And so we're going to be coming up to those questions, that particular question, as we continue down this path, because that's definitely going to happen in this story. So we are going to get to spiral around that some more. But I think the bottom line is that that was the plan. Jesus and God planned it that way. But for as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup. So Jesus has given the men a way to focus their thoughts, I think is the way Joseph Benner might indicate this, to focus their thoughts for communication with the I am in their heart, with Jesus, who will now be inside of them instead of physically present with them. This is be still and know I am God. When you participate in this ritual of eating and drinking, and they think about this bread represents the body, the wine, the cup represents the blood. This is what Jesus said during this last time that we saw him, that will help bring them into a be still and know I am God state, and that's where all communion begins. So he's leaving them with a particular practice. Now, this has been used by the church to, it's a ritual of communion with, it's really with everybody in the church to each other in the church. So it's a communion of divine shards together in their shared belief and faith in Jesus. Now, when these men would have done this perhaps privately, then it would have been more about a meditative ritual. But the church has used this as a communal ritual. I don't believe that particular communal ritual brings you into meditation with God in that moment, because you're sharing amongst all the divine shards. So there's no being still in that sense. I'm not sure that we can all be still together, although it is a practice of unity, so maybe we could, and maybe that is a moment for some people to enter into their private sheepfold moments with the I am. I think it's difficult in a public setting like that, although it represents a sheepfold. But I think that when Jesus is showing this here, it's more about an individual ritual that he's giving to each of the disciples. Something that later transforms into, and I don't know that it came directly from this ritual, but it transforms into something like the rosary beads. That there's a need for physical relics in order to still the mind. There's a need for ritual physicality in order to shut down the physical portions of the mind so that you can be more contemplative in the spiritual. This one even includes food and drink, which would probably still your hunger and your thirst, which are two other major distractions from your spiritual life. I would say that food and water, the need to obtain those two things, they consume a lot of time and a lot of effort, especially in a much older civilization like this. It's comparatively simple for us to feed our hunger and our thirst in today's society. But in older times, it would have, Peter was a fisherman. He spent all day trying to catch fish so that people could eat. So this would have been much closer, I think, to their... I think their spiritual, their physical lives were closer because of that they were fighting for their survival in a way that most of us don't. So I think it heightened their understanding of their spiritual life when they understood the lessons. I think it's one of the reasons that Peter is able to become such a leader in the church. And then Jesus says, let not your heart be troubled. I go to prepare a place for you. You know where I go and the way. And so we can see that the disciples are full of grief. The grief is a symbol, and we can see it clearly in the comic panel on the faces and the way that their heads are hung down. One's even crying on the table, openly weeping. The despair is a symbol of inner collapse. Their personalities are spiraling out of control at this moment because their inner selves are collapsing. They're realizing these truths about themselves, that they're not where they want to be. They're not who they want to be yet. They're still capable of this betrayal and this resistance, that they're losing their leader, that the one who can bring them further in the spiral will no longer be around, that they hold a deep love for this man, and he's telling them he has to go. It's also a symbol that they can't understand anything he's saying at this moment. They hear his words. The words stick with them. They record them for others to hear later. They spiral around the words themselves and pull much meaning from them at a later time. But in this moment, the despair clouds them from what Jesus is telling them. So when he says, I'm going, and Joseph Benner would say, to unity, I will just openly be in unity instead of being in this illusion of separation that is here in the earthly realm. You are all a divine shard that is using a form of self-delusion to form this illusion of this earthly reality, but you have to, because we worked it out together as a plan. There's a mission. You've got to express the divine attribute you're supposed to express, especially these 11 gentlemen. And that they know that the expression of that attribute is the way. They know that's the way to get to where Jesus is going. They also know that Jesus is in their hearts, and that they can turn inwards, not on a path of solitude, but on a path to unity within their own heart, where Jesus is waiting for them, and he will speak to them from there. It won't be in the direct physical communicative fashion that they're used to, but that he will be there. And so Jesus is telling them he's going to both places. He's going to heaven, and that heaven's in their heart if they turn around and look. And the disciple Thomas says, Lord, we know not where you go. How can we know the way? This panel, it very much reminds me of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. The wizard says, Dorothy, you go home anytime you want. You've always had the power. And she says, I don't even know where I'm at. How can I get home? I don't have the power to go home. And then the wizard tells her, you're wearing the slippers, and all you've got to do is click the heels together. And the truth is, she didn't even need the slippers. The slippers are the relic that allows Dorothy to focus her own internal powers. And her internal powers are simply to shut off the self-delusion, which then reawakens her in her form of unity, which was Kansas. A black and white area, because it's monochrome, because everything's the same color. It's unity. There's no individuality in unity because there's no personality, and that's one of the things that Dorothy was trying to get away from. She thought it'd be better if I could be somewhere I could be more individual. That's what Oz was. It was a walk into solitude. Now, she picked up friends in solitude because that's what people who are walking in solitude do. But they all seemed to know that there was a path. It was the yellow brick road, and there was something to accomplish. Now, that thing that they needed to accomplish was to find something that was already in themselves, but that they didn't realize was in themselves. And that's the story of a spiritual journey and a spiritual awakening. And Jesus is here telling Thomas, who is Dorothy, all you got to do is click your heels together. You've always known this. You just haven't accessed the knowledge. And Jesus says, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And so he tells the disciple, you do know the way because you know me. And this is alignment, as Joseph Benner would say it. You don't have to be able to see Jesus. You have to know that Jesus is there. You have to believe. You have to have that faith. Jesus accepts that as alignment. He turns you to face him even if your eyes are closed and you still can't see him because you won't open your eyes. Jesus is okay with your closed eyes. He will keep you facing him as long as you believe and you have faith. And he's confirming that for this disciple, that your eyes are on me, and you can see in the panel his eyes are, as well as the eyes of two other disciples. And as long as you keep your eyes right here, you do know the way. And this panel says, if ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. Now, Jesus distilled this into a single commandment that could then be, you could spin it in a fractal fashion into all the commandments. But his one commandment was, love each other as I've loved you, as I do love you. Reflect the love that I give you. Transmit the love that I give you. Project the love that I give you. This is what Jesus has told the disciples. That is the commandment. Now, that commandment can turn into other things depending on what you need the moment to be, but it should ultimately always reflect back that love was transmitted. Love was projected. Love was granted. Love was given. Love was accepted if love was given to you. It's all of these things, but it's all love. And then together, it looks like an open air patio or porch with, I believe those are Greek, could be Roman columns. They're round, but they have is that a scalloped pattern? I don't know the right word for that. But they're not a smooth roundness. They have some kind of surfaces on them. But Jesus says, Father, the hour is come. I have manifested thy name unto man. So Jesus was part of a creation process. That's what manifestation means. And Joseph Benner talked a lot about the creation process. He says, I have manifested thy name unto men. I have given them thy word. Thy word is truth. As thou hast sent me into the world, even so have I also sent them into the world. So God gave Jesus a mission, And part of Jesus's mission was to give that same mission to other men. And their job is to go out and give that mission to yet other people. I think that sometimes they call something like this a pyramid marketing scheme. This is not a scheme. It is a pyramid. And so you can see that pattern there. It's somewhat like, I think, the way that Amway or Shackley or even Mary Kay builds their empire. You start with one person and they bring in a bunch of other people underneath you, and each of those other people is bringing in other people. That's kind of what the pattern, that the mission that Jesus has given these people is. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus or Christianity is some kind of pyramid scam. It's just that it has that pyramid structure. That's the way it's going to spread, which is, in today's society, a proven method for how you do spread an organization with, I think they call it exponential growth. But that's where we've got to leave it for today, because we've hit the hour again. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today and sharing these moments with me. I greatly appreciate your comments and your chat. Please be sure to like and hit that subscribe button. We're going to go out of here on a song. This song is Quiet Light. You all keep on taking care of business.
Beauty walks soft as a whisper, yet thunders like storms overhead. Kind and gentle in its passing, still a thing of might and dread. And the word became a lantern, placed in trembling human hands, saying, "Child, behold my glory, not in faces, but in hearts that understand." For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every wanderer is called home. He wrote truth in quiet margins for the ones who read between. Faith will conquer, said the giver. I am the light you've always seen. Beauty's not the mask we're wearing, not the mirrors feeding grace. Beauty burns within the heart space, kindness casting God's own shadow on the contours of a face. And the I am speaks in stillness, in the breath between each thought. The soul remembers union with the love it never lost. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every wanderer is called home. He wrote truth in quiet margins for the ones who read between. Faith will conquer, said the giver. I am the light you've always seen. Distance only closes in the moment, when the veil of flesh is torn. Yet the word says I am with you from the instant you are born. Dreams stay cold, room silent, body, mind and spirit still as one. In that hush the lantern brightens, and the night becomes undone. Be as gentle as the lamb is when you're dealing out your love. Be as fearless as the lion when you guard what's holy from above. Let your honor strike like lightning, swift and righteous in its speed. For the light that lives within you is the strength behind the creed. For the light shines in the darkness, soul receives a lantern, every seeker finds the one. He wrote truth in quiet margins as a gift for those in need. Faith will conquer, said the giver. Walk in light and you are free. And the I am whispers softly as the lantern warms your hand. I am beautiful.